Poor mother is abandoned with an old goat, but she leads them to something that changes their lives. Margaret woke with a heavy heart, even before opening her eyes. The silence of the small house in Bakersfield felt different that March morning, as the sun barely began to warm the dry dirt of the backyard. There was something wrong in the air, a feeling she knew well after 10 years of marriage to Vincent. That's when she saw the scribbled note on the kitchen table, a few lines that changed everything. "Maggie, I can't take this life of misery anymore. I took the money we had saved and I'm going to try my luck in the big city. The goat stays for you to manage. Vincent." Her hands trembled holding the crumpled paper as 8-year-old Tyler James appeared in the doorway, yawning. "Where's Dad, Mum?" Margaret swallowed her tears and quickly folded the note. How to explain to a child that his father had left, taking the family's only savings with him? How to tell Emma Grace, just 5 years old, that the man she eagerly waited to return from work would never come back? "He had to travel, son. It'll be a while before he returns." The lie came out heavy from her mouth. Margaret walked to the window and saw Hope, the old lame goat Vincent had always despised, chewing on some dry twigs near the makeshift pen. The animal lifted its head and stared at her with those brown eyes, as if understanding that now it was just the 4 of them against the world. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of despair. Margaret searched every corner of the house, looking for any money Vincent might have forgotten, but only found loose change that wouldn't even buy a bag of flour. In the kitchen cabinet, there were only a few handfuls of beans at the bottom of an old can and a small piece of hard brown sugar. "Mom, I'm hungry," murmured Emma Grace, tugging at the hem of Margaret's faded dress. "I'll make breakfast soon, sweetie. Call your brother." But there was no coffee, no sugar, no milk. Margaret sat in the wooden chair Vincent had made with his own hands in their first years of marriage and finally let the tears fall. 10 years of life together. 10 years believing he would change, that he'd get a steady job, that he'd stop drinking on weekends, and now she was alone with 2 children and an old goat in a land where rain was already a miracle. "Mom, are you crying?" Tyler James approached and touched her arm gently. "No, son. It's just the wind blowing sand in my eyes." There was no wind. The air was still as it always was before the heat set in. Margaret stood up and went to the small cracked mirror hanging on the wall. The woman staring back seemed to have aged 10 years in one morning. Messy dark hair, eyes red from crying, skin already marked by years of sun and worry. She needed to think fast. Mrs. Dorothy, the nearest neighbor, lived 2 kilometers away. Maybe she could borrow a few pounds of flour until Margaret figured out what to do. But the thought of asking for help with 2 children clinging to her skirt made her feel a shame that burned inside. That's when she heard a strange noise coming from the backyard. Hope was bleating loudly and pulling the rope that tied her to the pen with impressive strength for a 15-year-old goat. The animal seemed agitated, restless, as if trying to go to a specific place. "What is it, Hope?" Margaret went outside and approached the goat. The animal stopped pulling for a moment and looked directly into her eyes. There was something there Margaret had never noticed before, an intelligence, an urgency that went beyond common hunger or thirst. Hope began pulling the rope again, always in the same direction, pointing toward the driest, rockiest part of the property. "She wants something, Mum," observed Tyler James, who had come out with his sister. Margaret untied the rope without knowing why. Perhaps it was desperation, perhaps it was intuition, but something made her trust the instinct of that goat that Vincent always called useless. Hope began to walk slowly, limping on her right hind leg, but with a determination that impressed the whole family. "Where is she going, Mom?" asked Emma Grace, clutching Margaret's hand. "I don't know, sweetie. Let's see." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The walk started easy for the first 100 meters, but soon the terrain got more difficult. Loose rocks, holes made by erosion, and low, thorny brush made every step a dangerous adventure for the children. Margaret picked up Emma Grace when the girl stumbled for the 3rd time, while Tyler James tried to keep up with the goat's pace with the determination of a big boy. "Hope, where are you taking us?" murmured Margaret, already feeling the weight of her daughter and the heat of the sun that was beginning to bear down. The goat stopped at a specific spot on the ground and began to scratch the earth with her front hooves. It was a place that didn't seem to have anything special about it. Dry dirt, some stones, a few twisted mandakaru branches. Hope made the same motion several times, as if she were digging or trying to show something. "Is there something buried there, Mum?" Tyler James crouched down and examined the ground. Margaret set Emma Grace down and knelt beside her son. The earth was hard as cement, cracked by the sun and lack of rain. But there was something different about that spot, an almost imperceptible dampness, a slightly darker color around it. "It can't be," she whispered. The possibility that crossed her mind seemed too absurd to be real. But Hope kept scratching the same spot insistently, as if she knew something the humans didn't understand. Margaret looked around and saw a stone big enough to dig with. Without fully understanding why she was doing it, she began to dig. The earth was softer than she imagined. After a few minutes of effort, her hand touched something wet. Real dampness, not just imagination. Margaret dug faster, ignoring her breaking nails and her hands beginning to ache. Tyler James tried to help with a dry stick, while Emma Grace watched curiously. "Mom, water is coming out," shouted the boy, as a small puddle began to form in the hole. Margaret couldn't believe what she was seeing. Crystal clear water bubbling up from land that hadn't received rain in almost a year. Clean water in a place where everyone depended on old cisterns and water trucks that came by once a month. She touched the water with her fingers and tasted it cautiously. It tasted like nothing. Not salt, not mud, not the bitter minerals of the well water she knew. It was different from any water she had ever tasted in her life. Tyler James and Emma Grace drank a little from her cupped hands, and Margaret felt a strange sensation of relief wash through her body. "Hope knew there was water here," said Tyler James, petting the goat's head. "How could she know?" asked Emma Grace. Margaret had no answer, but for the first time in many hours, she felt a tiny spark of hope growing in her chest. Perhaps they weren't completely lost. Perhaps there was still a chance to rebuild their lives on that piece of dry land she had always considered worthless. The problem was, they didn't know if the water would keep flowing, or if it was just a momentary miracle. Margaret decided to return the next day with buckets to see if she could collect enough water to drink and cook with. At least they wouldn't have to beg water from the neighbors, or depend on the goodwill of the truck drivers. The journey home was livelier. The children talked about the discovery as if it were pirate treasure, while Hope walked with her head held high, as if she knew she had completed an important mission. Margaret still felt a knot in her stomach whenever she thought of Vincent and the money he had taken, but the discovery of the water gave a new perspective to her problems. That night, she cooked the last remaining beans in the can and said a silent prayer of thanks. The children went to bed early, tired from the adventure, but Margaret stayed awake, planning what she would do in the coming days. She needed to get food. She needed to find out if the water was reliable, and most importantly, she needed to find a way to earn money. The next morning they returned to the discovery site with 3 old buckets and a large empty paint can. The water was still flowing, slowly filling the small cavity they had dug the day before. Margaret worked for 2 hours deepening the hole and creating a sort of makeshift well. "I'm going to get Mrs. Dorothy to see this," Margaret decided, after filling the 3 buckets. Mrs. Dorothy was a 62-year-old woman who knew the whole area like the back of her hand. If anyone could explain that discovery, it was her. The walk to the neighbor's house took 40 minutes, but Margaret needed advice from someone more experienced. "Water flowing at this time of year?" Mrs. Dorothy repeated, incredulous. "Child, are you sure you weren't dreaming?" "You can come see, Mrs. Dorothy. The children saw everything." The older woman agreed to go with her, driven more by curiosity than conviction. During the walk, she told old stories of the region, of people who had found springs in unexpected places, and how those discoveries had changed their lives. "My grandfather always said animals sense things we don't," Mrs. Dorothy commented when Margaret told her about Hope's behavior. "Dogs feel earthquakes before we do. Birds sense rain. Maybe goats sense water." When they arrived at the site, Mrs. Dorothy fell silent for long minutes, watching the water that continued to flow slowly but steadily. She knelt, tasted the water, wet her face, and closed her eyes as if analyzing something beyond the flavor. "Margaret, my dear, this is not ordinary water," she said finally. "What do you mean, Mrs. Dorothy?" "This water tastes different. There's something in it I've never tasted before. It's not bad, quite the opposite. It's special." The word hung in the air like a promise. Margaret didn't exactly understand what her neighbor meant, but there was something in Mrs. Dorothy's tone of voice that suggested importance, value, possibility of change. That afternoon, while the children played near the house, Margaret talked at length with Mrs. Dorothy about what to do with the discovery. The older woman suggested seeking out Mr. Harold, a man who understood water and wells in the region, to assess if it was worth making a bigger investment in the site. "But I don't have money to pay Mr. Harold," Margaret confessed. "He's a good man. He might agree to look at it for free, at least at first." The conversation was interrupted when Emma Grace came running from the kitchen with alarming news. "Mom, the water in our container is running out." Margaret had completely forgotten that she needed to conserve the little water left at home. The discovery of the well had created a false sense of security, but they still needed water to wash clothes, bathe, and clean the house. It would be necessary to make several trips to the spring site to maintain an adequate supply. For the next 3 days, Margaret established an exhausting routine. Every morning, she carried the empty buckets with help from Tyler James, while Emma Grace held Hope's rope. The goat always led them along the same path, as if it knew every stone along the way. In the afternoon, they made a second trip to fetch water for bathing and other needs. It was on the 4th morning that something strange happened. Hope refused to go in the usual direction toward the well. Instead, the goat insistently pulled the opposite way, toward an even rockier and seemingly lifeless area. "What does she want now?" asked Tyler James. "I don't know. Maybe she's tired of the same path." But Margaret decided to follow the goat's intuition once more. What happened next completely changed her perspective on the earlier discovery. At a spot located about 300 meters from the first well, Hope repeated exactly the same behavior, scratching the ground insistently until Margaret began to dig. This time, the water gushed up faster and in greater quantity. Not only that, but it had an even more distinct taste, almost sweet, completely different from the water at the first location. Margaret looked at Hope with a mixture of respect and disbelief. "How many places like this does she know?" she murmured to herself. The discovery of the second well brought a new dimension to the situation. It was no longer about luck or chance. There was a pattern, a logic that Margaret didn't understand, but was beginning to deeply respect. That night, she noted in an old notebook the exact locations of the 2 spots, using references like large stones and dried trees to mark the places. On the 5th day, Mrs. Dorothy brought Mr. Harold to evaluate the discoveries. The man was thin, his skin weathered by the sun, with eyes that seemed to have seen everything life in the backcountry could offer. He examined the 2 wells in silence, tasted the water from both, and asked a few questions about how Margaret had found the locations. "Ma'am, your goat is special," he finally said. "These 2 spots have water of a quality I've never seen the likes of around here. It's not cistern water or reservoir water. It's deep groundwater, the kind that springs straight from the heart of the earth." "Is that good?" asked Margaret. "It's very good. Water like this is worth money in the big city. People pay a lot for clean, tasty water. The question is how you're going to manage to take advantage of it." Mr. Harold explained that it would require investment to turn the spots into proper wells, with pipes, pumps, and a storage system. The initial cost was too high for someone in Margaret's situation, but he suggested an alternative. "You could start small, bottle the water and sell it at the Bakersfield Fair. There are people who pay well for quality water, especially if they know it's natural and pure." The idea seemed simple, but Margaret didn't even have money to buy empty bottles. Mr. Harold sensed the dilemma and made an unexpected offer. "Look, I can lend you some glass bottles I've stored at home. If it works out, you pay me back with the first sales. If it doesn't, at least we tried." "Why would you do this for me?" "Because I've seen many people give up on life for much less than what happened to you, and because that goat reminds me of my mother. She also had a special way of sensing things." Margaret accepted the partnership with gratitude and nervousness. She had never sold anything in her life, never had to convince strangers to buy something. But the alternative was to give up and accept poverty as a permanent fate, something the recent discoveries had made unacceptable. For an entire week, Margaret and the children worked filling 50 glass bottles with water from the 2 wells. Each bottle was carefully washed, filled to the brim, and sealed with corks that Mr. Harold had managed to borrow from a friend who made spirits. The final result was modest, but it represented the first product that Margaret could call her own. On Saturday morning, she arranged the bottles in 3 wooden crates and asked Mrs. Dorothy for a ride to the Bakersfield Fair. Her heart raced as she walked among the stalls, looking for a suitable spot to set up. Most of the more established vendors occupied the best spots, leaving Margaret a little corner near the wilted vegetables and cheaper products. "Pure spring water, natural mineral water," she called out timidly, feeling her cheeks flush with embarrassment. The first customers passed by without paying attention. Some looked with curiosity, but moved on when they saw the price she had set. 50 cents a bottle, a price that seemed fair compared to sodas and other drinks sold at the fair. Margaret began to feel discouraged when a well-dressed man approached the makeshift stall. "Is this water from this region?" he asked. "Yes, sir. It comes from a natural spring I discovered on my property. May I try it?" Margaret opened one of the bottles and offered a little in a small plastic cup she had brought for tasting. The man drank slowly, as if analyzing the flavor, and asked to try the water from the second well. "Interesting, it tastes very different from the city's tap water. I'll take 10 bottles for my family to try." The first sale earned $5, enough money to buy flour, beans, and some other basic groceries. Margaret felt victorious, but soon realized she still had 40 bottles to sell, and few people showing real interest in the product. It was then that a middle-aged woman approached and asked about the water's origin. Margaret told the story of the goat and the discovery, and the woman was enchanted by the narrative. "My mother always said animals know things we don't," she commented. "I'll take 5 bottles, and if my family likes it, I'll come back next week to buy more." The day at the fair ended with the sale of 23 bottles, a better result than Margaret had dared to hope for. The money collected was enough to settle the debt with Mr. Harold and still have a little left over for food. More important than the financial return was the confidence she gained upon realizing that there were people willing to pay for the quality of the water that Hope had found. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. During the following 2 weeks, Margaret developed a routine that began before sunrise. Every morning, she and the children walked to the wells to fill the day's bottles. Tyler James had become an expert at washing and sterilizing the containers, while Emma Grace helped by organizing them by size and checking if they were properly sealed. Hope always accompanied them on these morning expeditions, and Margaret had begun to notice strange patterns in the goat's behavior. On some days, the animal went directly to the known wells. On others, she seemed restless and tried to lead them in different directions, as if there were more discoveries waiting to be made. It was on one of these restless mornings that Hope guided them to a third location. This time, the water that gushed forth after digging had a slightly bluish tint and a more pronounced mineral taste. Mr. Harold, consulted about the new discovery, was impressed with the differences between the 3 springs. "Mrs. Margaret, you have a real treasure buried on this land. Each well has unique characteristics. This means the water table around here is very special, very rich in different minerals. What does that mean for my business? It means you can sell 3 different types of water, one milder, one sweeter, and a mineral water. In the big city, people pay high prices for this variety." The prospect of expanding production brought new challenges. Margaret would need more bottles, more time for bottling, and most importantly, a way to reach the customers willing to pay more for superior quality. The local fair had proven a good start, but the customers were still few and the financial return limited. It was Mrs. Dorothy who suggested an idea that would completely change the scale of the business. "Why don't you look for the people who work in the city offices? They spend all day in the air conditioning, drinking cold water. If you can convince a few to try your water, they could become regular customers." The idea seemed intimidating for someone used to rural life, but Margaret decided to try. She prepared a small presentation telling the story of the discoveries and highlighting the natural purity of the water. With 10 bottles in a bag, she headed to the commercial buildings in downtown Bakersfield. The first rejection was harsh. A bank manager treated her with disdain and threw her out of the branch before she could even explain what it was about. The second attempt was at an accounting office, where the receptionist at least listened to her politely before gently dismissing her. On the third try, at a small medical office, something different happened. Dr. Jennifer Lynn, a nutritionist who saw patients in the city twice a week, showed genuine interest in the proposal. Natural mineral water from the region. That's exactly what I recommend to my patients, but it's very hard to find reliable local products. Margaret offered a sample of the 3 waters and explained how each had been found. The doctor tasted them all carefully and asked detailed questions about the bottling process and hygiene conditions. If you can guarantee me consistent quality and regular delivery, I can recommend your water to my patients. Many of them pay high prices for water imported from other regions. What price do you think I could charge? For this quality? At least double what you're asking at the fair. Artisanal, local mineral water has great value for people who care about health. The conversation with the nutritionist opened Margaret's eyes to possibilities she had never imagined. It wasn't just about selling water, but about offering a differentiated product to people willing to pay more for quality and reliable origin. The problem was how to increase production to meet a larger demand. That night, Margaret sat down with the children to do the math. If she could sell 50 bottles a week at the price suggested by the nutritionist, she would have enough money not only for basic needs, but to invest in business improvements. The prospect of real financial independence began to take shape as a concrete possibility. The first obstacle arose when Mr. Harold explained that it would be necessary to invest in better equipment to increase production safely and hygienically. Pumps, pipes, storage tanks, and a proper bottling setup represented an initial cost of at least $3,000, a sum completely out of Margaret's reach. But there is an alternative, he suggested. You could form an association with other residents in the area. By bringing together several interested people, the investment is divided, and everyone benefits. The idea of involving neighbors in the business left Margaret divided. On one hand, it would mean less control over decisions and the need to share profits. On the other hand, it was perhaps the only way to grow beyond the limits her financial conditions allowed. Mrs. Dorothy showed interest in the partnership and suggested talking to 3 more families in the area facing similar economic difficulties. The first meeting to discuss the proposal took place at Margaret's house on a night with a full moon, with 8 adults and several curious children present. The idea is simple, explained Margaret. Each family contributes work and a little money. In return, everyone shares in the profits proportionally to what they contributed. The reactions were mixed. Mr. Walter, namesake of Margaret's ex-husband but with no relation, showed enthusiasm and offered his small pickup truck for making deliveries in town. Mrs. Florence, a 58-year-old widow, was skeptical about the venture's chances of success. Do you really think we're going to make money selling water? Water that comes from the ground anyone can get for free, she argued. But it's not just any water, Mrs. Florence, replied Margaret. It's special water, with a different quality. People in town are already buying it and asking for more. The discussion went on for 2 hours, with arguments for and against being presented by all present. In the end, 4 families agreed to join the partnership, each contributing $50 initial and committing to work at least 2 days a week on the project. The formation of the informal association brought new energy to the venture, but also revealed the need for more complex organization. They needed to define responsibilities, establish work schedules, create quality control systems, and, most importantly, develop more efficient sales strategies. Mr. Walter took responsibility for logistics and delivery, using his pickup truck to transport the bottles to customers in town. Mrs. Florence, despite her initial resistance, proved excellent at organizing the bottling processes and quality control. The other 2 families split their efforts between production and finding new customers. The first month of the association's operation was marked by constant discoveries and adjustments. Demand for the products had grown beyond initial expectations, especially after the nutritionist Jennifer Lynn began regularly recommending the water to her patients. The problem was maintaining consistent quality with the increase in production. It was during this period of rapid growth that an unexpected event completely changed the business's perspective. A testing lab from Phoenix, hired by the nutritionist to verify the water's quality, sent a report that left everyone impressed. "Your 3 waters have unique mineral compositions," explained Jennifer Lynn during a visit to the property. "The levels of magnesium, calcium, and other minerals are exceptional. This isn't just good water, it's water with real therapeutic properties." The technical report confirmed what consumers had already begun to perceive empirically. Several people reported improvements in digestive issues after a few weeks of regularly drinking the water. Others mentioned increased energy and better sleep quality. "What does this mean for us?" asked Margaret. "It means you have a product even more valuable than you imagined. Water with scientific proof of health benefits can be sold for much higher prices." The news of the water's exceptional quality spread quickly through the region, attracting the attention of influential people and business people interested in making a deal. The first contact came through a merchant from Phoenix who offered to buy the entire monthly production at a fixed price. "You wouldn't need to worry about sales or deliveries," he explained during a visit to the property. "I would buy everything you could produce and resell it in the capital under my own brand." The offer was financially tempting, but it would mean giving up control over the product and the possibility of independent growth. After long discussions, the association decided to refuse the proposal and continue selling directly to end consumers. The decision proved to be correct when 2 weeks later, a story about rural entrepreneurship was published in the local newspaper, mentioning Margaret and the Goat Hope. The article attracted the attention of journalists from larger outlets, and in less than a month, a television crew from Phoenix was documenting the discovery of the mineral springs. "How would you explain to our viewers how a goat managed to find these special waters?" asked the reporter. "I don't know how to explain it," Margaret answered honestly. "I only know that Hope sensed something that we didn't. Maybe animals have a wisdom that we've lost." The story aired during prime time and generated a response far beyond expectations. In the following days, the property received hundreds of curious visitors wanting to see the wells and buy the water straight from the source. Demand grew to such an extent that the association had to hire more families to handle production. The sudden success brought new and unexpected problems. The makeshift infrastructure couldn't handle the volume of visitors, creating difficulties in maintaining proper quality and hygiene. Furthermore, some people arrived with unrealistic expectations about the miracle properties of the water, forcing Margaret to constantly clarify that it was a quality natural product, not a magical cure for all ills. "We need professional help," Margaret admitted during an association meeting. "We don't know how to handle this much activity or the responsibilities it brings." It was then that Jennifer Lynn suggested seeking the Small Business Development Center, an institution that offered free consulting for small rural enterprises. The first meeting with a specialized consultant revealed that the association had, almost by accident, created a business model with far greater potential than anyone had imagined. "You have a differentiated product, an authentic story, and a base of loyal customers," explained the consultant. "With proper structuring, this could become a prominent regional company." The process of formalizing the business took 3 months and involved complex legal, sanitary, and commercial issues. It was necessary to register the association as a cooperative, obtain environmental and sanitary licenses, implement rigorous quality controls, and develop a professional brand for the products. Hope, now 16 years old and even more lame than before, officially became the cooperative's mascot. Her image appeared on the bottle labels, along with the story of the discovery, creating a unique visual identity that set the product apart from all competitors. The growth of the business allowed Margaret to make important improvements to the property. A new house was built to replace the precarious dwelling they lived in before. Tyler James and Emma Grace got their own room and were able to attend a better school in town. More important than the material achievements was the transformation in the family's self-esteem and future outlook. "Mum, "Do you think Dad will come back now that we're doing well?" asked Tyler James one afternoon while helping organize bottles for delivery. "I don't know, son, and to tell you the truth, I don't know if I want him to come back." The answer came out firmer than Margaret expected. Months of independence and professional success had transformed her relationship with the past. The insecure and dependent woman who cried holding a cruel note no longer existed. In her place was a respected entrepreneur, dedicated mother, and community leader who inspired other women in the region. The moment to test this new identity arrived when Vincent reappeared one late afternoon, driving a used but well-kept car and wearing clothes that clearly hadn't been bought with money from manual labor. Margaret was organizing bottles in the new warehouse when she saw him approach with a smile that tried to hide his nervousness. "Hi, Maggie. I heard you all are doing well here." "Vincent." She showed neither joy nor anger, just the neutral acknowledgement of someone meeting an acquaintance after a long time. The children, who were playing in the backyard, stopped everything upon seeing their father and ran inside the new house, a reaction that spoke volumes about how they felt regarding his return. "I thought you'd be happy to see me," he said, clearly uncomfortable with the cold reception. "I'm neither happy nor sad. You made your choice and we made ours." Vincent tried to explain his absence, telling a confusing story about opportunities in the big city that didn't work out and problems with dishonest partners who stole his money. Margaret listened in silence, showing no emotion. "I came to stay, Maggie, to help you with this water business. I know it was hard without me, but now we can be a family again." It wasn't hard, Vincent, it was liberating. The words sounded harsher than Margaret intended, but they were absolutely honest. The months without him had been the best of her adult life. For the first time, she had discovered what she was capable of when she didn't have to carry the weight of an irresponsible, alcohol-dependent husband. "You can't stop me from seeing my children," he argued, with a tone that began to reveal the anger behind the apparent humility. "I'm not stopping anything. They're right inside. You can talk to them if they want to talk to you." Tyler James and Emma Grace came out of the house after a few minutes, but maintained a respectful distance from their father. The conversation between them was tense and formal, without the natural affection that should exist between parents and children. It was obvious the children had learned to live well without him and didn't miss his presence. "Daddy, Mom built our new house all by herself," said Emma Grace, pointing to the structure. "And now she's the boss of a lot of people." "And Hope found 3 different special water wells," added Tyler James. "That's why we have money now." Vincent listened to the children's accounts with an expression mixing surprise and something that seemed like envy. Clearly he hadn't expected to find a prosperous and independent family, but a desperate wife grateful for his return. "Where am I going to stay?" he asked when it became clear he wouldn't be welcomed with open arms. "I don't know, but not here," replied Margaret. "We built this house with our own work. You made your choice when you left taking our savings. I can help with the business. I know how to sell. I know how to talk to people in the city. I can get new clients." Margaret considered the offer for a moment, not because she felt any desire to rekindle the relationship, but because she was assessing if he could be useful professionally. The conclusion was quick and definitive. "We already have enough people working with us, people we can trust." Vincent remained in the area for 2 weeks, staying at a cousin's house and trying various strategies to win back his family, or at least get a share of the business profits. Every attempt was met with politeness but firmness by Margaret, who had learned to value her independence above any social or emotional pressure. The situation became untenable when he began spreading rumors that he had legal rights to the discovery of the waters, since the land had been acquired during the marriage. The threat of a legal battle forced Margaret to seek legal guidance, discovering her position was stronger than she had imagined. "He abandoned the home and took the couple's assets," explained the consulted lawyer. "This constitutes abandonment of family and tacit renunciation of the assets. Furthermore, the discovery and development of the business happened entirely after his departure." The ensuing legal process was brief but emotionally draining. Vincent tried to argue that he had left home temporarily in search of better opportunities for the family, but the existence of the note he had left and the testimony of several neighbors contradicted this version. The judge ruled that he had no rights over the water business or the improvements made to the property after his departure. "The decision is made," said Margaret when she learned of the verdict. "Now we can move forward without looking back." The legal victory marked the definitive end of a painful chapter and the beginning of an even more ambitious phase for the cooperative. With legal security guaranteed, the members could invest in expansions without fear of future complications. New wells were drilled following the indications of Hope, who continued to demonstrate an inexplicable ability to locate special water sources. The cooperative's third year of operation began with a proposal no one had imagined. A supermarket chain from Phoenix wanted to distribute the water in all its stores. The contract would represent growth of over 300% in production and the need for significant investments in equipment and facilities. "It's the chance we've been waiting for," argued Mr. Walter during the cooperative meeting. "We'll be able to reach thousands of new customers. But we'll also lose control over the product," countered Mrs. Florence. "It won't be artisanal water anymore if we produce on an industrial scale." The debate lasted several meetings and divided opinions among the members. Some saw the opportunity as a natural evolution of the business, while others preferred to maintain a smaller scale, but with greater control over the product's quality and identity. The final decision was to accept the contract, but with specific conditions that preserved the artisanal characteristics of the production. The water would continue to be collected from the original wells, bottled manually, and identified with the story of Hope and the discovery. The increase in production would be achieved by expanding the number of cooperative members, not by industrializing the process. Implementing the new contract required significant changes in the cooperative's organization. 23 families from the region were integrated into the project, each taking on specific responsibilities in the production chain. Margaret was elected president of the cooperative, a position that placed her as the main representative of the group in negotiations and strategic decisions. Hope, now 18 and visibly slower in her movements, continued to participate in expeditions to discover new water points. In recent months, she had indicated 5 additional locations, each with distinct mineral characteristics. The laboratory confirmed that the cooperative's land contained one of the richest and most diverse aquifers in the region. "This goat is a phenomenon," commented a geologist hired to map the property's subsurface. "She can identify differences in mineral composition that our equipment takes hours to detect." Hope's fame spread beyond the region, attracting researchers interested in studying how animals can develop special sensitivities for detecting natural resources. Universities from various parts of the United States sent teams to document the goat's behavior and analyze the methods she used to locate the water sources. "Mom, do you think other goats can do what Hope does?" asked Emma Grace, now 8 years old and much more articulate than before. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she really is special. Or maybe we just never paid attention to the signs animals give." Her daughter's question made Margaret reflect on everything that had happened since that terrible morning when she found Vincent's note. In less than 3 years, her life had completely transformed. From an abandoned woman with no prospects, she had become a respected businesswoman and community leader who influenced important decisions for dozens of families. More than the personal transformation, Margaret was proud of the impact the business had created in the region. The cooperative directly employed 43 people and indirectly benefited dozens of other families through services and supplies. The community's average income had doubled, allowing improvements in education, health, and infrastructure that benefited everyone. "You've created a model that can be replicated in other regions," commented a consultant from the state government during an official visit. "The combination of a differentiated product, cooperative organization, and community development is exactly what we need to strengthen rural areas." The prospect of expanding the model to other rural communities became a personal project for Margaret. She began traveling through the region offering free consultations to groups interested in developing similar ventures. Not all places were lucky enough to have special aquifers like those on her property, but many had other natural resources that could be used sustainably. During one of these trips, in a community in rural Oklahoma, Margaret encountered a situation that vividly reminded her of her own most difficult moments. A young mother had been abandoned by her husband with 3 small children and arid land that seemed good for nothing. "Mrs. Margaret, how did you manage to believe it would work?" the woman asked, after hearing the cooperative's story. "I didn't believe," Margaret answered honestly. "I just did what needed to be done to survive. The success happened one day at a time." The conversation with the woman from Oklahoma made Margaret realize how much she had grown in confidence and wisdom. The insecurity and emotional dependence that characterized her in the past had been replaced by an inner strength that allowed her to face challenges without panic and make difficult decisions without needing others' approval. Tyler James, now 11, attended a private school in Bakersfield and showed interest in studying business administration to help with the family business in the future. Emma Grace, 8, preferred spending time caring for Hope and the other animals the cooperative had acquired to diversify production. Both children grew up with a self-esteem and future perspective that Margaret had never had in her own childhood. "Mom, do you think I'll be able to find water like Hope finds it?" asked Emma Grace one afternoon as they accompanied the goat on one of her exploratory expeditions. "Maybe. But the most important thing is that you've already learned not to depend on others to solve your problems." The lesson had been learned in the hardest way possible, but Margaret knew it was one of the most valuable she could teach her daughters. The independence earned through one's own effort was worth more than any inherited wealth or gift received from others. Hope remained the cooperative's biggest star, but her advanced age was beginning to worry everyone. Veterinarians consulted explained that goats rarely live beyond 20 years, and she was already 18. The possibility of losing the source of inspiration and symbol of the business sparked discussions about how to preserve her legacy. "We need to train other goats to do what she does," suggested Mr. Walter. "It's not a matter of training," argued Jennifer Lynn, who continued to follow the cooperative's development. "Hope has a special sensitivity that probably cannot be taught." The question became academic when 2 of Hope's kids, born the previous year, began to demonstrate behaviors similar to their mothers. During a routine expedition, the young animals became restless in specific spots that later revealed underground water veins. "Could it be hereditary?" asked Margaret to the veterinarian monitoring the kids. "It could be. Some animals develop special sensitivities that can be genetically transmitted. It's more common than you'd think, but people rarely pay enough attention to notice." The discovery that the special ability could continue into the next generation brought relief and hope for the cooperative's future. Even if Hope could no longer actively participate in expeditions, her legacy would be preserved through the kids who were already showing promising signs. The cooperative's 4th year of operation was marked by consolidation and controlled expansion. Production had stabilized at a level that met the contracts signed without compromising the artisanal quality that set the product apart. New points of sale were opened in neighboring towns, always respecting the growth limit that the local infrastructure could support. Margaret turned 40 at a party, organized by the cooperative members, a celebration that brought together over 200 people among employees, family, and business partners. During her thank you speech, she looked at Hope resting in the shade of a tree and felt a deep gratitude for everything that had happened. "5 years ago, I was a desperate woman holding the rope of an old goat," she said to the audience. "Today, I am a businesswoman who employs dozens of people and helps support an entire community. This was only possible because I learned to trust myself and value signs that many people ignore." The speech was interrupted several times by applause, but the most emotional moment happened when Tyler James and Emma Grace climbed onto the improvised stage to hug their mother. The 3 people embracing represented a family that had been reborn from the ashes of personal tragedy to become an example of resilience and success. The cooperative story shows that sometimes the best treasures are hidden in the most unlikely places, Margaret continued. "We just need to have the courage to follow the signs, even when we don't fully understand where they are leading us." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. That same night, after all the guests had left and the children were asleep, Margaret sat on the porch of her new house and reflected on the journey that had brought her there. The insecure woman who cried while holding a cruel note seemed to belong to another life, so distant that sometimes she doubted it had really been her. The transformation had not happened overnight. Each small victory, each problem overcome, each difficult decision made successfully had built layer by layer a new identity. Her confidence in herself had grown gradually, fueled by concrete results and the respect she had earned in the community. Hope appeared slowly on the porch. As if she knew Margaret needed company in that moment of reflection, the goat lay down at her feet, with the same gesture she had made every night for 5 years. It was a silent ritual of mutual gratitude between two survivors who had found in each other the strength to overcome abandonment and scorn. "Thank you, old girl," whispered Margaret, stroking the goat's head. "Without you, I would never have discovered what I'm capable of." The following month, the cooperative received an unexpected proposal that would once again test Margaret's ability to make strategic decisions. A multinational bottled water company offered to buy the entire brand and operation for an amount that would allow each member to retire comfortably. "It's an offer we can't refuse," argued Mrs. Florence during the meeting where the proposal was presented. "None of us ever dreamed of having so much money in our lives. But if we sell, we lose control over everything we've built," countered Margaret. "That company will industrialize production and turn our water into just another common supermarket product." The debate divided the members into two nearly equal factions. Those who supported the sale argued it was time to capitalize on the success before market changes could reduce the business's value. Those against it argued that selling would betray the community and environmental principles that had motivated the creation of the cooperative. "We need to vote," decided Margaret after 3 inconclusive meetings. "Each family has the right to 1 vote, and the majority decides." The vote was scheduled for a Thursday after a week of intense campaigning from both sides. Margaret spent the previous days visiting each member individually, not to influence the vote, but to better understand each one's motivations and concerns. The conversations revealed that the issue went far beyond the financial value offered. For many families, the cooperative represented not only a source of income, but community identity and life purpose. For others, immediate financial security weighed more than considerations of control and autonomy. "What do you think we should do?" asked Mrs. Dorothy on the eve of the vote. "I think each person should vote according to their own priorities," replied Margaret. "My responsibility as president is to accept and respect whatever decision the majority makes." The answer was diplomatically correct, but internally Margaret had a very clear position. She had worked too hard to build something unique and special to hand it all over to executives who saw only numbers on spreadsheets. The cooperative represented much more than a profitable business. It was living proof that ordinary people could create alternatives to the traditional economic model. On voting day, 23 families gathered in the local school hall to decide the future of the cooperative. The tension was palpable as Margaret opened the session and explained once more the terms of the buyout offer. Each family representative had 5 minutes to state their position before the secret ballot. The arguments presented showed the complexity of the decision. Families with children of college age saw in the sale the opportunity to fund higher education that would otherwise be inaccessible. People nearing retirement saw the chance to ensure financial security in old age. On the other hand, younger families preferred to maintain control and continue building something of their own. "Whatever the outcome, we will remain united as a community," declared Margaret before opening the voting. "This decision will not break the bonds we have built over these years." The vote count was conducted by 3 randomly chosen people to ensure total transparency. The results surprised everyone. 17 votes against the sale, 6 votes in favor. The margin of victory was greater than anyone had predicted, indicating that the emotional and identity-based appeal of the cooperative had outweighed purely financial considerations. "The decision is made," announced Margaret with evident relief in her voice. "We remain independent." The celebration that followed was spontaneous and emotional. Even the families who had voted for the sale seemed satisfied with the outcome, as if they secretly preferred to maintain autonomy, but needed the security of others making that decision for them. The refusal of the buyout offer generated repercussions in the specialized media, with articles praising the decision as an example of conscious entrepreneurship and sustainable development. Universities began using the cooperative's case in studies on alternative models of economic organization. You have proven that it is possible to be financially successful without giving up principles, commented an economics professor who visited the cooperative for academic research. This is the kind of example the country needs to see replicated. The academic and media recognition brought new opportunities for Margaret. She was invited to speak at seminars on women's entrepreneurship and rural development, sharing her experience with audiences interested in learning about successful cooperative models. During one of these lectures in Washington, Margaret met other women who had created successful businesses under adverse circumstances. The stories differed in details, but were similar in essence: women who had discovered inner strength when forced to fend for themselves. What we all have in common is that we stopped waiting for others to solve our problems, observed a businesswoman from Virginia during an informal dinner. Forced independence taught us we are more capable than we imagined. The observation resonated deeply with Margaret. Her personal transformation had begun as a necessity for survival, but had developed into a life philosophy based on autonomy and personal responsibility. She had learned that true hope does not come from favorable circumstances, but from the ability to create opportunities even in seemingly impossible situations. Back in Bakersfield, Margaret implemented a mentoring program for women in the region facing difficulties similar to those she had overcome. The project began informally, with conversations in her own home, but soon became structured as an official cooperative initiative. The goal is not to teach ready-made formulas, but to help each woman discover her own resources and capabilities, she explained during the guidance sessions. Every person has unique strengths that only appear when they are truly needed. The mentoring program revealed impressive stories of overcoming adversity that were happening quietly in the region. Women who had started small businesses after growing older or becoming widows, single mothers supporting entire families with activities they had invented out of necessity, farmers who developed innovative techniques to deal with drought and climate challenges. "There are many more entrepreneurs in our region than I imagined," Margaret commented to Jennifer Lynn during a program evaluation. "They just don't receive the recognition they deserve." The nutritionist suggested documenting these stories and creating a network of mutual support among the local women entrepreneurs. The idea evolved into a more ambitious project, a monthly fair where small-scale producers could sell their products and share experiences. The first Bakersfield Women Entrepreneurs Fair took place on a rainy Saturday in June, attracting 17 producers and about 300 visitors. Margaret organized a special booth where she sold the cooperative's water alongside products from other women, demonstrating in practice how collaboration benefited all participants. "This fair shows that our region has potential for much more than we imagined," she said during the opening speech. "When women support each other, the entire community benefits." The success of the first fair motivated the creation of a formal association of local entrepreneurs, with Margaret elected as the first president. The organization began promoting regular events, facilitating partnerships between producers, and offering basic management and marketing courses for small businesses. The growth of activities alongside the cooperative did not diminish Margaret's attention to the original business. Water production continued to grow sustainably, always respecting environmental limits and maintaining the quality standards that had built the brand's reputation. Hope, now 19, had become more of a senior consultant than an active explorer. She accompanied mapping expeditions for new water sources, but the heavy work was left to her offspring, who demonstrated skills similar to their mothers. "She's teaching her children everything she knows," observed Emma Grace, now 9 and already considered an expert on the cooperative's animal behavior. "It's as if she knows she needs to leave everything prepared for when she can no longer work." Her daughter's observation made Margaret reflect on her own role as a mentor and leader. At 41, she still felt young and full of energy, but she was beginning to think about how to prepare others to take on important responsibilities in the cooperative and the Entrepreneurs Association. Tyler James, now 12, showed growing interest in the commercial and administrative aspects of the business. He spent entire afternoons in the cooperative's office, learning about quality control, inventory management, and customer relations. Emma Grace preferred the environmental and sustainability aspects, always asking about the impact of the cooperative's activities on the environment. You two will have to choose your own paths, Margaret told her children during a conversation about the future. I will support any decision you make, but I want you to know that you are capable of achieving anything you desire. The statement came with the conviction of someone who had learned that lesson in the most practical way possible. Margaret knew her children would have opportunities she never had, but she also knew that the most important thing was the inner confidence that allowed them to seize those opportunities when they appeared. On the 6th anniversary of the discovery of the first wells, the cooperative organized a special celebration that brought together the entire community and several visitors interested in learning about the artisanal mineral water story. The event included talks on sustainability, environmental education workshops, and a photo retrospective showing the project's evolution. 6 years ago, I was a desperate woman with 2 children and an old goat, Margaret said during the celebration's main speech. Today, we are a cooperative that employs 50 families and serves as an example for communities across the country. The audience interrupted the speech with prolonged applause, but Margaret insisted on continuing to highlight what she considered most important. What I want everyone to understand is that this transformation did not happen by miracle or luck. It happened because we learned to value what we had, even when it seemed to have no value to anyone else. It happened because we decided to work together instead of competing with each other. And it happened because we never gave up, even when everything seemed lost. The speech was recorded and later used in educational materials about cooperative entrepreneurship, taking the story of Margaret and Hope to audiences far beyond the original region. Universities, NGOs, and government agencies began using the case as an example of successful sustainable development. The national attention brought opportunities to expand the model to other regions, but Margaret chose to focus on local consolidation instead of rapid geographic growth. She had learned that sustainable growth required solid foundations and that attempts to expand too quickly could compromise the quality and values that set the cooperative apart. I'd rather have a small, well-run project than a large, poorly managed one, she explained to investors interested in franchising the model. Our success is based on personal relationships and community commitment that cannot be artificially replicated. The decision to maintain a local focus allowed Margaret to dedicate more time to activities she considered equally important, mentoring other women and educating her children. She had learned that business success without personal fulfillment was incomplete, and that true leadership involved developing new leaders. During the cooperative's 7th year of operation, an unexpected event once again tested the group's resilience and adaptability. A severe drought affected the region, significantly reducing the water flow in the main wells and forcing the cooperative to ration production for the first time since operations began. We'll have to reduce production by at least 40%, informed Mr. Harold during an emergency meeting. The wells aren't dry, but the flow has decreased a lot. The news caused concern among the members, who depended on the regular income to support their families. Some people suggested drilling deeper wells to maintain production, but Margaret advocated for a more careful approach. We can't risk permanently depleting our main resource because of a temporary difficulty, she argued. Let's reduce production and use this period to diversify our activities. The diversification strategy included investment in organic farming using well water for controlled irrigation, artisanal production of soaps and cosmetics based on minerals from the water, and expansion of educational rural tourism services. The new activities did not fully compensate for the reduction in water production, but they helped keep the members busy and generating income. This crisis taught us that we cannot depend on just one product, no matter how good it is, reflected Margaret during an evaluation meeting. Diversification isn't just good business practice, it's a matter of survival. The drought lasted 8 months, a period during which the cooperative had to rethink several of its strategies and priorities. The experience strengthened the group's unity and demonstrated that the organization had become resilient enough to face serious challenges without falling apart. When the rains finally returned and the well flow normalized, the cooperative emerged from the crisis stronger and more diversified than before. The new products and services developed during the drought became permanent activities, increasing financial stability and creating job opportunities for more people in the community. Difficulties always teach valuable lessons to those willing to learn, commented Margaret during an interview for a documentary about rural entrepreneurship. Our greatest achievement wasn't avoiding problems, but developing the ability to overcome them without losing our values. End of story. Now we want to hear from you. What did you think of Margaret and Hope's story? Do you believe animals can have special intuitions like the goat in our story? Tell us your opinion in the comments and share if you know of similar cases in your area. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Your participation is very important to us.